And we're on agenda item C2.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Joby Masagatani, Executive Assistant, and Kahana Albinio, Acting Division Administrator for Land Management Division, staff to the Investigative Committee on King's Landing to the Hawaiian Homes Commission, the King's Landing Committee. Commissioners, we have in front of you the report summarizing the efforts of the committee and their recommendations. The time frame is to bring this to the commission as required by the Hawaii Revised Statutes in terms of reporting back the committee's recommendations and its activities. And if there will be any action taken, we look to take that action next month on the agenda, working with the recommendations that were put forward by the committee. I understand from the testimony and listening to the testimony, I did just want to clarify some of the recommendations, just to be clear. And again, this report was definitely shared with all of the members of the committee, but as its author, I did just want to make clear what the intention was in the recommendations. So as Commissioner Awo had articulated, it is a framework and a process. So as a state agency, of course, process is critical. So the recommendation articulates starting with the due diligence that is necessary to determine the viability of homesteading for the timeframes that are expected for homesteading. There are specific items that the rules require be looked at in determining whether a property is appropriate or a good candidate for kuleana. Those are identified in sub A. And so the first recommendation is to conduct this due diligence to determine whether kuleana homesteading would be an appropriate, or whether King's Landing would be a good candidate for kuleana homesteading as a long-term disposition. Along with that, if there are efforts that need to be taken to mitigate risk associated with the location of the current village or potential alternatives to relocate where the kuleana homestead community can be in the future, that would be part of this due diligence effort. So this is really an attempt to understand and best articulate the direction when we talk about long-term. Yeah, so in this framework, we're talking about dealing with this due diligence happening over this transition period to make a determination long-term. As it relates to the possibility of an alternative type of land use, I think that was raised some concern by some of the testifiers, and residential use is not a viable long-term land disposition for this location. And to this, you know, unfortunately, or just realistically, as a state agency, we may not have the same flexibility as a private landowner in terms of the rules and requirements that we have to abide by as it relates to health issues or sea level rise. And it's never, oftentimes we have a number of people that say, hey, just give me the land, I'll take it as it is, I have no problems with it. But once we put on restrictions like you're required to reside or you're required to cultivate, it does create an expectation that the area that you're residing in is safe and able to be resided in for a long period of time. So I just, in the event that the due diligence indicates that long-term residential occupancy is not viable, or there are no steps that can be taken to mitigate the sea level rise over time, then the commission may have to make a decision as to an alternative land use long-term. Now, long-term might be 20 years, it could be 50 years, it could be 100, And so in that intervening period, the recommendation puts forward having a new land disposition to the existing users, which is MAHA. so that we work with them in this intervening period. And as a part of some of the issues regarding enforcement and these other conditions are intended to be addressed as part of that new disposition. And so therefore, the last recommendation is that a new investigative committee be established, made up of the existing members, specifically focused on the issues that need to be considered as part of this very unique transition process. So I just wanted to hopefully make that clear that we would only consider, or the committee would only consider alternative land uses if homesteading and implied in that residential use was not a viable option for King's Landing in the long run. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair and the other members of the committee, if they, and any comments or questions.
Thank you, Joby. Any of the other members of the permitted interaction group would like to say anything? David?
Thank you. Joby, I know that we had discussed one of the possibilities was to look at an undivided interest type lease in order to preserve the positions of anyone that may have been there, assuming we can get through the rest of it. And I thought I saw it in the submittal, but I'm having a hard time.
Yes, it's included under the fourth recommendation, and is articulated as one of the items that the new investigative committee could review, which is the use of undivided interest that leases as an interim step.
I see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Patty and then Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I wanted to commend the PIG group that put together the submittal, which, well, I got it yesterday. Didn't really go through the whole thing, but the PIG group, with their boldness, took upon this lengthy King's Landing issue. I mean, it was overlooked from administration to administration. And finally, this commission and the PIG brought it to the attention. And even if it's a framework of process, as Mr. Awol stated, it's a framework of looking and listening to the people and coming up with solutions of King's Landing. Because it seems that no administration wanted to ever touch it and looked at it. And so I commend the PIG group. My question is, several questions. One of them is the risk and liability of the state. Has been discussed further of the risk and liability? Should this go forward? And well, they've been there for 42 years, so the risk and liability was overlooked. But should something come concrete with our recommendation from the commission? Who takes the risk and liability? You did bring up the climate change, and I understand that this parcel is near the ocean site. So, this is another liability. And it just comes to me with risk and liability. And I know that there's more to discuss in the long term of relocation and things like that will come up. But the other question that was brought up at one of the testifiers was the general use. I think a statement was made that they didn't want anybody else generally to be able to come into the King's Landing property. And then they brought up trespassing of illegal activities. So can somebody answer that, David, or somebody from the PIG, or more up to that?
I'll take a first step, and then folks can jump in. So in terms of risk and liability, Any of the property that we have statewide that is not leased out to someone, the department generally has a risk and liability. So Humu'ula, the 50,000 acres, Ka'u, all of those areas that are not leased out, general lease, not licensed out, not leased out to a homesteader. Generally, the department is responsible, and quite frankly, we are the deep pockets as a state agency. So if there are any claims to anyone getting hurt, etc., that's where the buck stops, I guess, is the best way to do that. With regards to not having additional access for anyone other than the present folks at King's Landing, cultural access for fishing, cultural access for picking opihi and limu has always been allowed. There are some people that are currently there that do not have the same standing as King's Landing folks as we move forward, and so that's where I think one of the tasks that they want identified is who's going to be responsible for, in the future, anyone else coming into the area that's not authorized. So, and I'm happy to yield the floor to.
So with that being said, real quick, so I understand that MAA is a nonprofit organization as stated. So is that, so being a nonprofit organization is general liability is also compliance to their nonprofit status?
Yes, in the past, they provided us with copies of liability insurance. Once a disposition is considered and approved by the commission, then of course that would be required once again.
Okay. And real lastly, just to kind of get, so are the people that are there, are they beneficiaries? Have they been on the wait list? Are they 50% quantum? Are they beneficiaries?
A requirement
Beneficiaries?
A requirement to be there and be part of MAHA is that you have to be on the wait list.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you again to the PIG group for all your hard work and diligence on bringing this forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Patty. Randy?
Yeah, mahalo, Patty. Mahalo, Chair. I guess, so I do understand that in moving forward toward decision making, it's important that the department is honest about possible challenges that may arise as a result of due diligence. I think it's important for the King's Landing Ohana to understand that up front. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that what's contained in there is going to be the end result, but it could be. So, in listening to everybody's mana'o this morning, the testifiers, the two things that rise to the top for me based on their mana'o is the creation of Juliana Lease Awards. I think that would meet much of what they are seeking. And then to establish undivided lessee awards, because these things do take a very long time to develop and create the right model for them to occupy the land. I'm also hearing from the King's Landing Maha that they have come to terms with the fact that not everyone in following this process, not everyone will necessarily get a lease. And I think that's a really big concession for MAHA to be making in their effort to move forward. The challenge for the department, and I think this goes to what Alan was saying this morning, speaking about what Skippy Ioane has done for many decades, his contributions to the Lahui, to the movement. I think it's prudent for the department in honoring that legacy that we create a model that will withstand the test of time and will have all of the safeguards built into it that ensures once we assign leases, they are there for the long term. And some of what may be required as a result is we may not have the luxury of stepping away from requirements that we have to address and deal with. So that's my manao. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Dennis?
Yes, and I also want to thank the committee for putting all their time and energy into this project. I just have a couple comments and concerns and on the issues, the environment. I'm concerned about wastewater treatment in the future, since that is an area that is subject to sea level rise. You know, for a long-term project, we may be looking at some type of a sewer plant to handle some of this wastewater away from sea level rise. So I just want to make sure that when we're looking at those things that it's important to take those into consideration. In 2050, we're supposed to be to septic systems, but I understand there's a different type of system they're using there. I don't know if those would make it with sea level rise. One other thing is the location in relation to the airport's approach pattern, the noise, environmental issues, fuel and so on and so forth. Being in the industry for over 30 years, there were many issues around airports with noise. I know that probably now nobody's said anything about noise or environmental issues, but that can be rather costly on the department if that did backfire on us going forward. So, and I have faith in the group moving forward. I think as Joby mentioned, there's going to be a lot of looks like a lot of brainstorming going forward, and actually uses some of the department criteria as to where can we go within the confines of the act itself. And I think the Maha Group understands that we have certain restrictions, and we do have to move forward that way. And again, Skip Ioane and all of his folks that have been on this project for years, I commend them for keeping it together as long as they did. It's sort of like throwing people out in the middle of nowhere and say, okay, it's all yours. And then Hawaiians don't always agree with each other. So I appreciate what they're doing, and I have all the faith in the group moving forward. I wish them luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Randy?
Yeah, thank you, William. I just forgot to mention too, the concerns that are raised by Maha regarding criminal activity in their community. It's not unlike other communities who have raised similar issues. And because they live in such a remote area, there is a temptation to seek their own authority to regulate and deal with these issues in these remote areas. But I would caution the department and Maha not to take on those kinds of liabilities. I think it's in their best interest and our best interest to avoid that and not subject themselves to any other kind of litigation that may result due to their good intentions. But it does go back to the department's capacity. We're in areas, urban areas where we have gaming houses that the department cannot respond to. We have this occurring in Maku'u and other places throughout the state. And so in moving forward for places like King's Landing, I think the PIG, we do have to take a very deep dive on what is the solution to mitigating that very unique circumstance. But beyond King's Landing, I have a concern for every neighborhood that's experiencing these crime waves and looking for safe haven from the department. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Okay, Randy, appreciate that. Thank you. Other commissioners? Zachary?
Chair, this question is for David. You mentioned, David, earlier that you were going to meet with MAA or the association. Are you planning on going to that at King's Landing?
Yeah, I think I think we were trying to have a conversation. We already had one conversation with the group in Kilkaha, and it was our plan to try and have another conversation. What form that's going to take, I guess, is going to be determined by this Omicron blow up. But at least we can, even if it has to be virtual, at least we can have that meeting with them or try and set something up. But I think we will wait until the chair appoints the next PIG. Since we're going to end this, we're going to end our role, I think, today, and then once he appoints the next one, I think that's the intention. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think it's really important that we have communication, ongoing communication with this group, because I was really impressed with the testimony that they gave today, this morning, you know. And all these kupunas came out and shared, and some of them were a little emotional, you know. So, you know, I think it's really important that we go out and when things get better, of course. Thank you, David. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Zach. Patty?
Real quick with closing, Mr. Chair, with David's statement, you know, I'd like to support that the PIG stay together when we do another creation of King's Landing, that we keep the PIG group together, which is they've done an excellent job. We wouldn't want to change it. I wouldn't want to take it. And so it's just a comment to that statement, is to keep the PIG together. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Patty.
You know, I do have a final comment, and I do want to thank David for making this an issue, not wanting to kick that can down the road and dragging us into this. But it's a very important initiative, and I myself would not like to see this kicking of the can down the road continue. So I'm hoping that we can get to where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Other commissioners? Dennis.
Thank you, Randy. You're elected. I agree that the PIG should stay together. They put a lot of time in it. They're close to the beat. We're here to support if they need any support, but I would appreciate the PIG stay the same group we have. Thank you.
Mahalo, Dennis. Okay. Any other comments, commissioners?
No.
If not,
Are we to entertain a motion to support the reported investigative committee report?
I believe the HRS requires that we report back and then any action will be taken at the next meeting. So there will be an item for action on the next, the February meeting, seeking acceptance of the recommendations and moving forward with recommendations that were outlined in this submittal.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Joby. And not to forget, we want to thank the staff too for working with the PIG and putting their efforts into making this move forward. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you, Patty. Thank you.
Okay.